My father was 19 years old when he volunteered to serve, and I would say that most of the Japanese soldiers were of his stature. They were, you know, very small. I don't know, 5'2", 110 pounds or something like that. Can you imagine carrying your rifle, your pack into war? Months of combat, climbing up mountains, crawling in ditches, dead of winter, sick, cold, frostbitten, go rescue these men in the Vosges Mountains. It's quite a feat.
What was the role of the HAA during World War II? I would say the role of the HAA was that of any American unit. You know, just having a racial designation didn't make them different from any other American unit. They were to protect our country and win the war against tyranny. Under the hysteria of war, these Americans of Japanese ancestry were treated as second-class citizens. They said, we're going to prove we're American by our action.
The Army put out a call for 4,500 men. It asked for 3,000 to volunteer from the mainland and 1,500 to volunteer to serve from Hawaii. Well, nearly 10,000 from Hawaii stepped forward to volunteer to fight for their country, and my father was one of them. And I recall him telling us many years later that many of his friends wept. They wept when they were rejected from serving because they wanted to serve their country so badly.
They wanted to prove their loyalty to America, and so that's one of the reasons why they did that. My uncle and my father did because, more so because the father was held and, you know, incarcerated at Honolulu, and so that's why they had more to prove. But there were other families also that had, you know, some of the same background as my father and my uncle.
It was a very complicated issue that was tied up into issues of loyalty and allegiance, especially when the loyalty questionnaire came out. Would you, sign away your potential Japanese allegiance and citizenship to Japan, or sign your allegiance to a country that had incarcerated your entire community in these internment or incarceration centers?
The 100th is the first pioneer segregated unit, the first unit to fight in Europe. They were there 9 months before the 442 ever landed in Italy. The 100th was very instrumental in the establishment of the 442. Initially, when they landed in Oran, Algeria, there was still the suspicion and distrust of Japanese Americans. And at first they were thinking, we may not even let them fight in combat. We may just let them guard the train stations. The commander of the 100 Infantry Battalion luckily was a Kama'aina. He was a local boy, born in Hilo, and his name is Colonel Farrant Turner. And Colonel Farrant Turner took a stand with the War Department and said, I will back them. I know these guys, I trust them, let them fight.
The 100th Infantry Battalion began fighting in Italy in September of 1943. The 442nd was formed after the 100th, and the 442nd landed in Italy and began combat in June of 1944, 9 months after the 100th. The 100th became the first battalion of the 442nd Regimental Combat Team. This is how they joined. But the 100th was allowed to retain its unit name because of its extraordinary fighting record up until that point. So from that point, the 100th 442nd went on to fight in many iconic battles in Europe. Perhaps one of the most famous battles was the battle to rescue the lost battalion. There were about 200 Texas soldiers who were stuck in the Vosges Mountains in France. It was the dead of winter. 2 prior attempts by the Army to rescue these 200 Texas soldiers had failed.
The 442nd and the 100th Battalion was sent out to rescue the lost battalion. Military thought that they would do it in 2 weeks at least, be able to do that. They did it in 3 days.
The price of that victory was very, very high. They actually lost more men than they saved.
In Monte Cassino, towards the end of the war, when they couldn't break through the Gothic line, who did they ask? They asked for the 100 442. And so just this affirmation that these HAA were highly sought after was very important to build the self-esteem of these people, these Japanese Americans that were pushed down initially to being the top of the heap. So that's a huge difference in months, right? It's huge. They were allowed to prove with their blood the loyalty to America. So that was, even though they went and lost a lot of lives, right? From 1,300 that first landed in Salerno to 520 in 4 months. They proved it with their blood that they were loyal Americans. So that's, to me, a major turning point where America media started looking at these guys a little different and said, even though they have Japanese faces, they are loyal Americans. How could it be that these men were only 5'4", 125 pounds, about my size? How were they able to accomplish battles and overcome obstacles that nobody else could? And I think there are certain secrets to their success. A lot of them come from the heart, about duty, courage, honor, the same as any other American unit. But in addition to that, they had the Japanese values of obligation called giri. Gaman is quiet endurance. Gambari is to give it all you've got. That's the go for broke motto of the 442.
The key takeaway here is that the Nisei soldiers and veterans fought 2 battles. The first battle was on the war front in Europe and the Pacific, and the second battle was on the home front, when they returned home, particularly those in Hawaii, to help create a more democratic society. When the Nisei veterans returned to Hawaii, they said, "We have proven our loyalty beyond all measure, and we are no longer interested in going back to plantation life, and we are no longer willing to be treated as second-class citizens." And so many used the GI Bill, they got an education, and working with many others, they helped to transform the social, political, and economic landscape in Hawaii.
The 100th, this vanguard unit, is the one that changed the perception of Japanese Americans to the general public.
The war in Europe ended in 45, and the men of the 100th 442nd made their way back to American soil in 1946, and they stopped in Washington, D.C. on their way home to receive President Truman's Welcome Home and award.
You fought not only the enemy, but you fought prejudice, and you've won. Keep up that fight, and we'll continue to win. To make this great republic stand for just what its Constitution says it stands for, the welfare of all the people, all the time.
2 years later, he ordered the end to racial segregation in the U.S. military.
They were incredible soldiers. They would be the most highly decorated military units during World War II and beyond. It came at, of course, at an incredible sacrifice of the number of casualties. Of course, we also had some of the highest casualty rates, Purple Heart awardees in these particular units. But these young men would come back transformed and change the dynamics of how Japanese Americans, both in Hawaii and, of course, in the mainland, would be perceived and seen.
This is a military story of how soldiers displayed their Army warrior ethos, that fighting spirit, to prove their loyalty, and they happen to be Japanese Americans. And it's a story about how these soldiers carried that warrior ethos to their civilian lives and fought that second battle. But I think most importantly, this is an American story. It's an American story about patriotism. It's about persevering in the face of adversity. It's about pulling others up as you pull yourself up. And it's about personal courage and sacrifice. So it is truly an American story.